2,000 years, the story has been told the same way. A bright star appears in the night sky. Wise men from the east follow it across deserts and mountains until it comes to rest above a small town in Judea. There, in a stable, the child destined to change history is born. It is one of the most familiar scenes in the Western world. We see it in paintings, Christmas cards, films, even in school plays. And we think we understand it, but we do not. Because when you look closely, when you strip away centuries of tradition, the story of the Star of Bethlehem becomes something entirely different. It becomes a puzzle so strange, so layered, and so improbable that no simple explanation can make sense of it. A star that moves. A star that leads travelers step by step. A star that points to a single house. And a star that appears at the exact moment a Messiah is born, yet is seen only by a handful of men from a distant land. Astronomically, it is impossible. Historically, it is deeply mysterious. And theologically, it defies everything we thought we knew. Yet, what if the story isn't wrong? What if every detail is true, just not in the way we've always assumed? What if the Magi were not ordinary astrologers? What if the star was not a star at all? And what if this event was prepared long before the birth of Jesus, written into the sky itself, encoded in ancient prophecies, and witnessed by people whose identity has been forgotten? This documentary will unravel a secret that begins thousands of years before Bethlehem, crosses continents, connects the Great Sphinx, the Book of Genesis, the Essenes of Qumran, Persian mystics, and the movements of the heavens themselves, and ends with a revelation so extraordinary that it changes how we understand the Christmas story forever. Because the Star of Bethlehem was not a miracle that broke the laws of nature. It was a miracle that revealed them. If we are to understand the Star of Bethlehem, we must leave behind the familiar images and return to the world in which this story first unfolded. A world where kingdoms rose and fell across the deserts of the Near East, where astronomer priests watched the sky from Persia, where scrolls were hidden in caves above the Dead Sea, and where a single birth in Judea would echo across empires. To uncover the truth, we have to follow the evidence, not the traditions that came centuries later, but the texts, the sky, the languages, and the people who lived in that turbulent age. Because if the star was real, it must appear in history. If the star was astronomical, it must obey the sky. And if the star was a sign, then someone, somewhere, must have left a record of what they saw. So our investigation begins not in Bethlehem, but in the ancient world that surrounded it. The first question seems simple, yet it is the most contested of all. When was Jesus actually born? Our earliest sources do not agree. Matthew places the birth under Herod the Great, while Luke speaks of a census under Quirinius, nearly a decade later. Two dates, two histories, and between them, a silence that has puzzled scholars for centuries. But the Magi were not traveling through legend. They moved through real lands, under real skies, following something they believed was a sign of a king. If their journey happened, then the heavens of that period must hold the key. So we turn to the sky, to constellations that rise and set with mathematical precision, to planetary paths that can be traced backward across millennia, and to horizons that have not moved since the dawn of civilization. And here, on the eastern horizon of Egypt, we find a clue older than Bethlehem itself. The gaze of the Great Sphinx, fixed on the eastern horizon, an alignment that, at certain epochs, meets the rising of Leo, a phenomenon known since antiquity. The Great Sphinx faces true east, its eyes fixed on the point where the sun rises on the equinoxes, the balance point of the year. From this perfect alignment, two additional sunrise points unfold, the extreme boundaries traced by the solstices. At the winter solstice, the sun rises 28 degrees southeast of true east, directly toward the region of Mount Sinai, the sacred mountain where Moses received the law, the covenant that defined Israel's identity and revealed the standards of righteousness to an entire people. At the summer solstice, the sun rises 28 degrees northeast of true east, toward the latitude of Bethlehem, the town where the Messiah would be born, the one whom early Christians believed did not abolish the law, but fulfilled it, bringing a new covenant of grace that liberated humanity from the burden the law could reveal, but could not remove. In other words, the Sphinx's solstitial gaze forms a profound theological axis. Sinai, where the law was given. Bethlehem, where its fulfillment began. A single stone monument, carved thousands of years before Moses or Jesus, accidentally or intentionally marks the two turning points of biblical history: law and grace, command and fulfillment, Sinai and Bethlehem. And between these two sacred points, in the very center of this solstitial corridor, another sign appears. A sign not carved in stone, but written in the sky itself. The constellation Leo, the lion. Why Leo? Why the lion? The answer lies in the book of Genesis. In Genesis 49, 9-10, Judah is described as a lion's whelp, a tribe from whom kingship would not depart until a ruler comes, the one to whom it belongs. A prophecy hidden in plain sight for millennia. To be exact, the prophecy did not appear all at once. It unfolded in stages. The first sign came in early August, 14 BCE. Viewed from the ancient horizon watched by the Great Sphinx, Jupiter was the first planet to rise in the eastern sky just before sunrise. To ancient astrologers, Jupiter was the planet of kings, the bearer of authority, legitimacy, and divine mandate. But Jupiter alone did not announce a king. For that, it had to meet the king's star. As Jupiter rose, Eta Leonis appeared precisely in the direction of Bethlehem. And moments later, Regulus followed. Regulus, the brightest star of Leo, known across the ancient world as the heart of the lion, the fixed point of kingship. In Babylonian, Persian, and Greco-Roman tradition, Regulus marked the place where royal power was anchored. Not a wandering sign, but a throne in the sky. When Jupiter approached Regulus, the meaning was unmistakable to those trained to read the heavens. The planet of kings was activating the star of kings. Authority was not merely passing through the sky, it was being established. And like a crown placed upon a king's head, Mercury, the messenger of the gods, stood almost in conjunction with Regulus, sealing the announcement. At the same time, meteors from the daytime sextantids streaked across the sky, symbols of divine messages, transition, and sudden insight. The sign was clear, but it was not yet complete. In the weeks that followed, the sky continued to repeat itself. Not randomly, but with intention. Night after night, Jupiter remained close to Regulus, returning again and again to the same royal place in the heavens. To ancient observers, repetition was not redundancy. It was emphasis. In early October of that same year, something extraordinary occurred. For 5 consecutive nights, Jupiter and Regulus rose together shortly after midnight. Each night, the constellation Leo appeared slightly earlier than before, as if the lion itself were rising to meet the moment. And each night, Eta Leonis emerged first from behind the horizon, precisely in the direction of Bethlehem. To those trained in celestial language, the symbolism was unmistakable. The sign was not announcing a passing event, it was marking a beginning. Yet even then, the heavens withheld their final word. The alignment of October was nearly perfect, but nearly was not enough. The pattern demanded completion, and so the sky waited. Months passed, the nights grew longer, and then, on a winter evening, the sequence returned, not as a repetition, but as a fulfillment. On January 6th, 13 BCE, as astronomical twilight faded into darkness, the forehead of the lion appeared once more. At exactly 22 minutes past 6, Eta Leonis rose from behind the eastern horizon, directly above Bethlehem. 20 minutes later, Jupiter and Regulus followed, rising together for the first time since October. The planet of kings and the star of kings reunited at the horizon, not high in the sky, but at the threshold between earth and heaven. This time, the alignment did not return night after night. It lingered, and then it passed. The sequence was complete, and once again, the sky spoke in symbols. Near the rising point, meteors from the Anthelion stream flared briefly in the darkness, ancient signs of transition, revelation, and the crossing of a threshold. To the untrained eye, the night revealed nothing unusual, but to those who had been watching for generations, the meaning was unmistakable. The sign had not appeared in a single moment, it had unfolded in time, and now it had reached its end. The Gospel calls them simply Magi. Not kings, not wise men, not astrologers in the modern sense, just Magi, a title that had a very specific meaning in the ancient world. To understand their journey, we must travel far from Bethlehem, deep into the world of the East, into Persia, Media, and Parthia, the realms where priesthood and astronomy were inseparably linked. The Magi belonged to a tradition that stretched back centuries before the birth of Christ, rooted in the teachings of Zoroaster, the ancient prophet of Persia. Zoroastrianism was a religion of light against darkness, of cosmic order against chaos, a worldview in which the movements of the heavens reflected the moral structure of creation itself. In this worldview, the stars were not merely distant suns. They were signs, messages, markers of destiny. Persian priest astronomers were trained from childhood to read the sky as others read scripture. They mapped the planets, memorized star cycles, built observatories with openings aligned to specific constellations, and preserved their knowledge through oral teaching and sacred texts. Their task was to interpret the great clockwork of the heavens, the Asha, the divine order, and discern when a new age was beginning. Earlier Jewish communities, especially in exile, would have been familiar with these Eastern scholars. The Book of Daniel even describes Jewish sages serving among the astrologer priests of Babylon and Persia. And so, the Magi of the Nativity story were not strangers to the idea of a Messiah. Persian texts contain prophecies of a coming world-renewing figure. a Saoshyant, born of righteousness, announced by a miraculous sign in the sky. But the Magi who appear in the Gospel may have belonged to an even more distinct lineage, a group whose traditions echoed across cultures. Some early Christian writings, including the apocryphal Revelation of the Magi, claim their homeland was the land of Shir, a mysterious region to the east of Judea, associated by some scholars with the mountains near the Caspian Sea. This corresponds to the Talysh Mountains, a range rising sharply from the plains of ancient Media. And at the foot of these mountains, in the old traditions, lay a sacred spring, Zomorod Spring, a place associated with visions, ritual purification, and encounters with divine light. The legends speak of a moment when the Magi saw a great pillar of light descending onto the waters, revealing within itself a mysterious child of light, a being who showed them treasures not of gold or silver, but of understanding. Treasure in these traditions did not mean wealth. It meant revelation. This is not the imagery of Western Christmas tradition. It is older, stranger, and profoundly Eastern. According to these sources, the Magi were not simply following a star because it was bright. They followed it because it matched a prophecy known to their people. A prophecy that the light they had once seen at Zomorod Spring would someday appear again, not as a vision, but in the sky itself. And so, when Jupiter crowned Regulus in Leo, when Mercury traced its path beneath the lion, and when these motions aligned with the ancient gaze of the Sphinx, the Magi understood. This was not just a sign. It was the sign, the one they had been waiting for. But their journey was only beginning. To understand why the sign pointed westward, toward Judea, we must turn now to the people who believed these same prophecies from a very different angle. A community hidden in the cliffs above the Dead Sea. A sect devoted to purity, prophecy, and the study of the heavens. The Essenes of Qumran. High above the western shore of the Dead Sea stand a cluster of caves cut into pale limestone cliffs. From a distance, they seem unremarkable, shadows in a barren landscape. But inside those caves lay one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century, the Dead Sea Scrolls. The scrolls belong to a community known as the Essenes, Jewish mystics, scribes, and ascetics living at Qumran during the very period in which the Star of Bethlehem event occurred. The Essenes believed that history unfolded in ages, each marked by signs in the heavens. They studied the sky carefully, convinced that divine purpose was revealed through celestial order. Their writings are filled with astronomical references. Their calendars followed the cycles of sun, moon, and stars, not human convention. Unusual events in the sky were read as moments of intervention. They anticipated the arrival of a Messiah, a priestly teacher who would inaugurate a new age. In their scrolls, we find passages that echo both the symbolism of Genesis and the astronomical interests of the Magi. One text speaks of a star of Jacob, rising as a sign of a divinely appointed leader. Another describes the Sons of Light, a community called to recognize the moment when God's purpose would be revealed. Some scholars have suggested that the Essenes preserved astronomical records matching the alignments later observed by the Magi. And though the Essenes and the Magi lived worlds apart, one in the austere cliffs of Qumran, the other in the scholarly courts of Persia, their expectations converged. Both looked to the heavens for meaning. Both preserved prophecies of an extraordinary birth. But what if the Magi was older still? Older than Persia, older than Zoroaster, older than the civilizations that first learned to name the stars. Some ancient traditions trace their lineage of knowledge back to the very beginning of human history, to Adam himself. In these accounts, Adam was not merely the first man, but the first recipient of divine instruction. He was told what would come. He was shown how God would one day enter the world. Before his death, Adam entrusted this knowledge to his third son, Seth, a son described as pure and worthy of guarding what had been revealed. Seth, according to these traditions, recorded the hidden mysteries he received in a sacred book and carried them eastward, beyond the land of Eden, beyond the land of Nod, to a remote region remembered as Shir, a land at the edge of the inhabited world by a great sea. There, the knowledge was preserved not by kings or empires, but by a lineage of mystics. These were the Magi, an ancient order among the tribes of the Medes, entrusted with maintaining spiritual memory, astronomy, and prophecy. Long before they served Persian kings, they served tradition itself. According to the revelation of the Magi, a Syriac text copied in the early centuries of Christianity, and likely drawing from even older sources, Seth hid the first book of mysteries in a cave on a mountain east of Shir, a place called the Mountain of Victories. From generation to generation, a prophecy was passed down that a star-like light would one day appear, descend upon the waters below the mountain, and reveal the moment when God would be born in human form. The tradition speaks not of 3 Magi, but 12, guardians of the prophecy, who gathered monthly at a sacred spring at the foot of the mountain to purify themselves and to watch. In the lands once associated with Shir, near the Talish Mountains by the Caspian Sea, such a spring still exists. And there, according to the legend, the Magi saw a vision unlike any before. A pillar of light descending upon the waters, confirming that the ancient promise was nearing its fulfillment. To modern ears, the story may sound impossible. Yet it was written nearly 2,000 years ago, in a language close to that spoken by Jesus himself, and preserved in a tradition that connects the Magi of the East to the prophecies of Israel. If this lineage is remembered correctly, then the Magi did not follow the star because it was new. They followed it because it was familiar. A sign first spoken in Eden, carried through Seth, guarded in Shir, and finally written across the sky. The light that appeared to the Magi at the spring of Zamarad was not merely a sign. It was a presence. The being revealed within the pillar of light, the child of light, the star made visible, was understood as the Son of God, not in form, but in essence, a consciousness born of the Father. What the Magi encountered was not power nor command, but guidance, a living wisdom offered to the world. They were told that this light would lead them westward to Bethlehem, where the same divine presence would take human form. And they were told that there was no contradiction in this, that the one who guided them from the heavens could also dwell among humanity. In these traditions, the incarnation was not an act of domination, but of companionship. The Christ consciousness entered the world not to rule it, but to illuminate it, to become an inner compass by which human life might find its way. It was said that this presence would not belong to one people, nor remain bound to one place, that it could be known everywhere, wherever hearts were open to truth, to mercy, to life. What the Magi followed then was not a wandering star, but a promise carried through time, first spoken to Adam entrusted to Seth, preserved in the land of Shir, guarded at Zamarad Spring, and finally revealed openly in the heavens and on the earth. If this chain of memory is even partially true, then the knowledge of this divine mystery may have been shared far earlier than our histories record, known to those who aligned stone with sky, who watched the rising of the lion, and who understood that heaven and earth move in harmony. In this light, the Watchers of Egypt, the Essenes of the desert, and the Magi of the East appear not as isolated traditions, but as guardians of a single expectation. An expectation that history itself would one day be touched by revelation. And so, the moment remembered as Epiphany is more than a date. The word itself means revelation, the unveiling of what has always been present, waiting to be recognized. In this understanding, the birth at Bethlehem was not only the arrival of a child, but the awakening of a way of being. A divine consciousness offered to humanity as a guide, as a shelter, as a quiet light within the world. And where that light is recognized, the human heart finds its bearing.